Okay, great. Um, Thank you very much, everyone, for having us. A very, very special thank you for choosing to have Fini offer this seminar to you this morning. My name is Alejandra Zeledon. I am the Director of Training and Education for Fini. This morning, we're going to be talking about railing, right? And a lot that goes with it. So we have some interesting learning objectives. I like to speak in pictures. We have a lot of great photography and a really wonderful case study at the end of the course. Just to go over some of the basics that you see here. This is, of course, a fully approved course by AIA. You will receive one learning unit for today. That learning unit will be HSW designated. And this course will expire in 2023 in the month of May, as you can see that from my slide. I will be receiving all of your names, emails, and your AIA membership numbers. And if you're with any other association, you can put in that number as well. But we will be able to give you your credits through AIA. I'll be able to upload all of the file and get everything that you need, as well as your certificates of completion. So today's objectives that we have, we're really going to talk about how railing has really changed, right? Before we used to think of infill in a railing to indicate pickets or indicate glass. And now we have so many more options. And one of them is the non-rigid infill that is cable. So that beautiful 1/8 inch, shiny, gorgeous cable is actually an amazing way to open up the view. So we're going to talk a little bit about the more important aspects as well that are safety today, which will mean we'll discuss the code a little bit, our fasteners. We're going to talk about the proper way to mount our posts and understand those structural aspects of frame design, and also talk about the security in terms of lighting that a lot of folks like to use, gates, lightings. We're going to talk a little bit about harsh environments and what constitutes a harsh environment. And then, of course, the aesthetics of everything so that we have the enhancements and the beauty of it all, which is, I know, you all being architects are always very concerned with not just safety, but the absolutely the beauty of things. So make sure that we have all of those aspects covered here today. So let's begin with talking about an overview of aluminum railing. We're going to stick to the aluminum railing in this course for the most part. Of course, we can use other materials, but talk a little bit about aluminum.
No, I muted. Go in the picture.
So when we're thinking about railing now has this great functionality that it's not restricted only to, a safety, a security, a boundary. There's also durability we care about. We care about the way that we powder coat the different aluminum railings, and it's about space enhancement. So if you look at the photo that you see here, in the picture that I have, you can see how that railing sort of beautifully blends in with the backdrop of the stone, how it's base mounted, it's slightly raised. It's, when we're looking at the railing here, so we're going to see a lot of these photos that are going to help us understand. Here's our big wow factor. So we go from something traditional that we just saw in the prior slide, and then we have something here. So this is I think it's in Westford, Connecticut. This is an actual beautiful home sitting right on the Niantic River, okay? If you are inside of the property, if you're inside the house, which is this steamboat design in the rear of it. So if you come on the front of the house, it's just a very unassuming, regular building. There are a couple of, there's a downward slope with a couple of garage entries, and they're beautiful and they're great, but they're very regular. And then you come to the back and you see this, and you know that it's got a completely nautical design. The architect really took care of every element here to create that feeling that when you're inside, you're looking at the bow, and because it's sitting so close, even the height is adjusted so that when you're inside, you have the feeling of being on water. You feel like you're actually in the river while you're on the actual land. It's really an amazing, beautiful place. We've used lighting underneath the top rail, so it's all aluminum, and you can see this is tier 1, 2, 3, and 4 coming out to this bow. And we've double posted this edge here to have a better, if you can see, there's a better flow to the peak with that beautiful under railing lighting. Note that there is no bottom rail here. We have a bottom cable opening up that view completely. So it is a really that wow factor that you can also create where a railing, when you look at this, you can see how important that railing actually is. So we can look at that wow factor, but we can also do it commercial, residential, interior, exterior, all of those elements. I'm only going to spend a moment on this slide talking about modular railing kits. What this is, it's really a kitted product that is in the industry today where you're not someone looking for lighting and for, for gates, for any kind of specifics in other colors. So this is something that is made for retail. It's in the industry, so I'm treating it today. It's already pre-drilled. Everything is taken care of. All the parts, all the posts, and all the railing kits and stair kits are put together so that you can go into a store, grab it, take it home, install it. It does not have much customization at all. It is pretty much straight up to be used as a kit. It has the same quality that we expect from any responsible manufacturer today is using extrusions that are 6000 series aluminum. That is a very, very high grade of aluminum in the metals if you do the metal ranges. And then you actually have also the powder coating that's AMA 2604. What that means is a certain rating that constitutes, and we'll talk about it in a few slides when we get there, but it can actually perform well in what we consider harsh environments. So we'll talk about that at that point, but it's the highest grade of powder coating aluminum so that it can perform beautifully for years to come. So that's our modular, modular railing kits. What you want to do when you think of modular, and here's something, they usually come in one color. Here's your color, it's black. It has a fantastic look inside of this home. Everything is pre-drilled. What you want to look for is that you're offered a post cap. Everything is pre-drilled. You have caps over your mounting screws as well. So those are the things to look for when you're using a modular system, and also one that will actually have a range of at least 29 to 34 degrees for stair slopes, okay? Moving on, when you see in this photo here in these condos, is really, let's think about cost here. So go right out of the gate, you're thinking, wow, we have glass, we're using glass here. And we're thinking, wow, there's a high cost to this. And there is, as you know, at the start. Long-term, the performance based on the quality. So it's important to have the quality of the quality is there so that years to come, we can have that look like the day you installed it. So when architects or when other, contractors, we say, well, we're looking at other materials. There's a lot of excellent manufacturing out there and great materials out there. But I will say that the most important things to look at are quality. And it's a very, very sweet taste when we can, when we can save money in the beginning, but a very bitter one when it doesn't perform the way it should over the years, and then you're having to replace it. So those are the things to keep in mind when we think about durability of materials, to create those innovative designs and paying up front to do it right so that it lasts for years to come. And then it actually turns out to be a much better cost savings. If you take a look at this staircase, let's look at what's here. So the architect took it, look outside. Okay, we have some blacks outside, right? Then we have black on the inside. Then the architect comes in and says, well, look at the stone here. And we have this open staircase that is floating. Note the design is floating. We have the railing opening everything up because it's done with cable. We have these 3 tiers because we actually go downstairs in this house, and you're using wood to match the window to create that, to marry that look of the stone. And then you have that splash of a very, very beautiful color of silver coming into the picture as you have the furnishings in white and then the color of the flooring. These are the things that make railing look amazing. So what are the focal points are that floating staircase in the dark look with that railing, creating that unassuming yet beautiful blend of elements here. It's something that we want to always, when we think about it, we think about the height of the railing, what mounting types we're going to use, the type of infill that we're going to use is going to play a huge role, and also our accessories and our colors. So that is, those are now the considerations that before maybe railing wasn't as important in thinking about it, but now we know as look at what an incredible focal point that actually is inside of a house. So let's talk a little bit about the code before we get into the more fun things here, right? So we have the IRC and the IBC, so the International Building Code, the International Residential Code, and the authority having jurisdiction. These are the folks that actually influence the way that we build, right? And what we can and cannot do. In the photo, you can see here, our height is 36 inches and the mounting is to the side of the decking. The railing opens up that amazing view that you see that from a sitting position where we actually see it in that photo. You can sit down, read your book, have a cup of coffee or a drink and look over that view. So let's take a look at what actually impacts when it comes to railing, what we need to understand when it comes to the code. So I'll give everybody a moment to read the code. So this slide tells us that we need a barrier, a boundary. We need that at 36 inches above the grade, you are required a guard. It's pretty simple. You have to follow those rules. Moving on here, let's talk about the 4-inch sphere. When we are dealing with cable, it's a non-rigid infill, right? So we need to allow for deflection. The code, let's take a moment and read it. What is actually happening here is that the code tells us that an inspector is going to come on site with a 4-inch sphere. The 4-inch sphere is a representation of the size of the head of a newborn, okay? And that inspector coming with that ball, okay, if you are at 4 inches, you might be in a lot of trouble and you will likely fail because you're at 4 inches and that you didn't take into account that 1/2 inch deflection. So it's very important to create designs, and I'll show you what I mean by that, so that we do not open the cables beyond those 4 inches at any time. Therefore, how do we pass inspection? We're going to set out, we're going to have a vertical, every 3 feet. And we are going to have our cables spaced no more than 3 inches apart. With those rules in place, we're not afraid of the 4-inch sphere rule. So we're at 3 inches on the cables on the center of the post all the time, and we have a vertical every 3 feet. The vertical can be, say you're using heavier posts, totally fine, right? But your structurals can be spaced 6 feet apart, but every 3 feet, you are going to give me one of these pickets, okay? And the reason being, we don't want this cable to open up to that 4 inches that the code has as a rule. So in this scenario here, comes the inspector and they can't easily pass that sphere through those cables. It's not going to happen. So you would have to use a really good amount of force to do that. So you know you're going to pass at that point. Ladder effect. This language was actually introduced in year 2000. It really never really made it into the supplement of the International Residential Code in 2001. What is a ladder effect? If you're working in Chicago, if you're working in Baltimore, there's still restrictions to the use of horizontal cable because it is seen as having a ladder effect. Even though, thankfully, there's not a reason that, or any kind of case, thank God, that has been an accident in which, we had this issue with the ladder effect. When folks ask me, is my child going to climb? I ask them, does your child climb? For example, I have a brother who, as a kid, ruined every family vacation. He climbed everything. And instead of being at Disney World, we were at the hospital. It was horrible. But anyway, I can tell you, is your kid going to climb? There are those children that are very curious. They want to climb. Yes, of course, they're going to try it. It's a very awkward climb. It's a very painful one. The cable is 1/8 inches. It's very taut. It's tight. It's metal. It's painful. It's awkward. They try it, but mainly a study in psychology done years ago was what actually kept this from going into the code. Basically, if this were a solid barrier and you're and I'm a little kid and I'm right here on the deck and this is solid, I can't see anything, but I can hear something on the other side, I'm going to be prompted to climb, to try and get over that. When a child can see through it, the conclusion of that, they lose interest. Most of the time, that's actually true. They try to climb it, they realize, it's kind of weird and awkward, and they go away from it. So thankfully, that's where we're at when that happens. But the important thing is that I tell folks, if you have a child prone to doing climbing, exploring this kind of thing, curious, really curious, let's watch our kids when we're on the deck and when we're using cable. That's what's really important here. Let's take a moment and read a little bit about infill load capacity. Most important thing I can tell you here is that this was a above and beyond for fun, okay? This does not impact, there's no code provision that impacts a non-rigid infill like cable, okay? If this was a solid panel, we would be tested to apply a normal load of 50 pounds over that 1 square foot, right? So, but in cable, for fun, we actually did a test with 9 spheres inside of this square just to see how much pressure we would need. So it's a lot. But again, this does not impact a non-rigid infill. There's no code provision. I want you to pay very close attention to this slide. This is thread engagement. When we mount posts, we mount them with these lags that are different in their length, okay? Sometimes even different in diameter as well. What is important to understand here and to have as a safety, you want to have if you're at resident, you need to pay attention to the application height, whether it's residential or commercial, okay? And then whether we're interior or exterior and the type of mounting that we are using. So if we're mounting to the base, the fascia, whether we're interior, exterior, or with a bracket to the fascia. Most important thing is take a look at the differences when we are at higher, okay? Our railing height is higher. So we're at 42 inches in height. Exterior, take a look at the difference in the minimum penetration. So we need to always plan for the wood blocking to be very, very heavy underneath that deck, okay? Very, very important to note that because we have huge differences in measurements here. So we have a minimum, this is very, very important to understand minimum thread engagement for proper frame design and safety. Let's take a look at railing design options. So we have, this is very easy to understand. 36, 38, and 42. 42 usually is at least in the state of Massachusetts, a 42 railing height is going to be used in a commercial setting. Most of the time, 36 is required for sure, but you can have a 38 required for residential. These are actually going to be ordered, you're going to order these in extrusions of 10 and 20 foot lengths. They're going to be cut in the field at these minimum heights. Now in the state of California, you're doing any work there, you're at 42 inches, regardless of whether you're commercial or residential. The posts, the only things I'll say here, we mainly you see in the industry, this standard use for post if you're in a residential environment. And then you have a commercial post and a heavy duty post. The commercial, the residential has 4 screw chases, 6 screw chases on the commercial, and the heavy duty is going to have 6 screw chases with a different wall thickness here. Therefore, these, regardless of commercial or residential, these will be used as the end posts and corners because those are our load-bearing posts. Wood posts, amazing choice as well. So let's not forget wood that we can combine. Architects love to do this, combining elements. So we have wood here. We're using a beautiful wood cap in this photo and an aluminum cap in this one. And yet both designs are calling for the infill to have a top, in this case, a top and bottom rail in aluminum, and in this case, a top rail and no bottom rail. By the way, very important to note, there should not be passage of a 6-inch sphere right here between your surface, your riser, and your actual bottom rail, okay? So your tread, your riser, and your bottom rail, no passage of a 6-inch sphere per code. But you can see how that beautifully those elements work together. There is a new post in the industry today that is really awesome, which is a single corner post. What the designers, the engineers have done is the cable will come through, and actually this composite insert here is going to hold the cable. And the amazing thing about this post and why the engineering is so brilliant is it can take the cable tension from both sides. So it can be used in a corner by itself and sustain the tension of the cables from both ends. And this it actually lays flat here. This composite insert will hold it in place. It isolates the contact as well, which we'll talk about that when we discuss dissimilar metals. We also see in the industry 45-degree corner posts. This is just another option for those designs. You have it again in a standard and in a commercial that has the 6 screw chases versus the 4. So those can be mounted to the base fascia stanchions as well. So those are the options for the mounting for these types of posts at 45 degrees. Mounting options, so you can see them here, what we've been talking about. Mounting to the base, very, very common. To the fascia, very common. And of course, to the fascia with a bracket. That's when our nosing of the decking comes out a little bit and we need a bracket there in order to do the proper mounting. And then of course we can core mount or do this type of stanchion mounting, which will mean there's a post that goes in. This actually is a receiver. We're going to bury it inside the stone or the concrete slab and then slide the post on top onto the surface of here, the surface of the actual flooring. So that's something, and you'll see that. I'll make a note of showing you what that looks like in photos as we go along. Remember how we talked about thread engagement. This is what we're looking at here, okay? This is the diameter. This is our post. This is where we are at. You want to choose something that has a nice, at least 5-inch square plating for your mounting. And it's right here. Here's our wood blocking that's going to allow that thread engagement. So this is where we are keeping that post in place. This is where we're keeping safety in place. So here's our wood blocking and our rim joist. As we look into how we mount the fascia, if you take a look at the photo, which is much more interesting to see it than in here, again, you're minding your thread engagement here in the joist, right? And you're putting something on the inside of the deck to penetrate from the side. As you can see here, this is what the fascia mount looks like. From a sitting position or standing, as you look out, you do not see anything there on the surface of the deck. So that's not base mounted to the side. Again, some beautiful photography as well. We are in, I believe, we are in Hawaii for sure. And I think this is Kauai. So therefore, maybe the Big Island, actually this is the Big Island. And you can see when you walk onto this deck that you're actually keeping those, right, 6 feet apart. We have our picket every 3 feet. And it looks like we have a nice wood cap to go over that railing in aluminum. And it's also mounted to the side of the decking in the same thing. So the fascia with a bracket, because we had some nosing there that we had to use a bracket. And then when we're looking at stone tile or any kind of rubber roofing, when we're thinking about stanchion mounting or this type of mounting, will actually be great for any type of membrane that you don't want to penetrate very much, such as a rubber roofing type of material. In this case, again, you can see in that X-ray view why it's so important to have that in holding the actual post in place there. So we have that core mounting and the post slides right over it, attaching to it with these screws. 10 and 20 foot lengths, the same thing here for our top rails, okay? These are the styles that you'll note in the industry today. This is just a matter of taste. You'll definitely want to have these types of posts. Fantastic, because you have tons of options here. The graspable, it actually, if you're using a residential and you don't want, you don't need to have a continuous handrail, this is a great option because it is ADA compliant as far as being graspable, okay? So just keep that in mind. And then you have this low profile style that you can cap in composite or in wood for those types of designs that call for it. So we have the square top rail. I just want you to see what each one of them looks like in real life. So again, this is square and it's very, very narrow, but yet not completely, it's a 2-inch width, but it is not in a design that is considered graspable per code. Here's our graspable. It has that rounded design so your hand can get there. And as you can see, we have lighting on the posts and we have a bottom rail in this condition. And as you can see in this application, we have that graspable railing, okay? Sometimes you can use a different width or a different style for the level, but you're going to want to have something graspable for your stairs for sure. The rectangular, this is a very, very popular, it's probably the most popular in the industry. As you can see, what I love about this photo is that you can see the cable disappearing at different times of daylight. So it opens up that view completely. The reason that the photo has this cup of coffee or it can have a cocktail here, when you're entertaining, you can, the width of the actual top rail is enough to be able to put a drink on top of it. Again, in your own home, we don't want to do that in a commercial setting. And in your round, the architect had a lot of fun here. It seems like they had this like stone here. They did a round top to go with the theme of this whole area being round. Even the table is round. And they did this like semicircle. It's very, very nice looking. The reason we have to think of cable, think of it as a linear product. It doesn't really like to bend. So when we do this type of design, there's some staggering and some key placement to the post to make the cable actually bend and do this type of illusion. I see that there's some post accent lighting as well in this design, in this semicircular design. The top rails, as far as they're actually so important because even this elliptical top rail style is going to rest on top. It's going to be wide, but it's not going to give you that ability to put your drink on it. But it's going to have a gorgeous look on the top with a sort of a curved look to this elliptical top rail. And then you have the low profile. Check this out. This design to me is a beautiful use. The architect did a fantastic job in this type of design that for this client. And then look at what happened here. Fascia mounted, right? Fascia mounted in black. Now that lamp is also dark. They have some other dark elements. So you're using the railing in black and yet going with this beautiful finished cap for the top rail. Fantastic use of elements here in this very, very interesting design as well. So you're using that type of capping it, the low profile in wood. By the way, a low profile design on a railing can always exist by itself in low profile. It doesn't have to be capped, but you can do that. Colors here, very important to keep in mind. What is it that you want to do with that frame design? You know, what is it going to look like? So in this desert space, this red is fabulous. You know, it looks fantastic because you have you're getting those earthy elements there. And then you're using a lot of woods here by this like lake or pond area. Very beautiful. And then also this kind of having some fun with the top rail done in yellow. Again, you have some yellow plants here. It looks really, really nice. Those are some of the things that we want to do. The reason that I like to talk about this is we talked about that 2604 AMA design, or AMA powder coated actually. So what happens is, what constitutes a harsh environment is being inside of 2 miles of a harsh condition or a salt body of water. And what that happens is we want to make sure that we can test the powder coating in 5 years. If it's testing well beyond 5 years, it's going to do great for years and years to come. So we look at South Florida in the most humid, tons of humidity in the air that would bring about staining, corrosion, all kinds of things, and then test the powder coating there. That is what responsible manufacturers are doing in terms of utilizing this heavy grade of powder coating to sustain those types of environments. All colors that you may want, they're all available in the industry today. Not just these. I think some companies can mix 250, 200, upwards of that to pretty much match any color that you want. Wood grain top rail. This is also powder coated, you guys. Powder coating here. So in this walnut look, this is a cherry and this is a weathered gray. And these colors that you see in the industry today, this being the most realistic, this is when you don't want to cap in wood or composite, you can paint it right on. Same rules apply. We're still going to have it be that grade that is going to sustain the elements for the same period of time. So the powder coating, to give that wood look, nothing changes. It's the same warranty, same type of environment. So let's look at infills. So infill is where really, what is it that you want to use, right? Once again, remember in the beginning, we saw a floating staircase. Here we are again with that floating kind of look, right? So that's, and even lighting underneath it, So again, using cable to open up and create that kind of floating design. So that's very, very important in this case, because another type of panel would take away from the staircase, from seeing the staircase in a floating type of style design. So let's look at the infill basics. The first thing you're going to do always is set your post and set your top rail. That's very important. Then you're going to attach these. These are actually brackets. Okay, they're rail connecting brackets. What that means is if you're using a bottom rail, you're going to rest it onto this bracket here. You're going to have a top rail insert and of course your bottom rail, which again, some designs call for bottom rail and some do not. Tempered glass. This is very, very beautiful and very widely used, as you guys know. We have a bottom rail here, okay, a cap covering that bottom rail, and you have the allowable, wind. You want to make sure that you have an unimpeded view, you can tint it, and that you have allowed for wind as well in this outdoor type of environment to use glass. You also have pickets. Note that this is the photo I wanted to tell you about, that we've gone right into that stone. So that is stanchion mounted. And because this is a commercial space or where there are condos here, you never want to put something flat. This is an elliptical design, because flat, you put a drink here and it's glass and it falls over and someone can be seriously injured. So we want to control liability by thinking about these things. Also, horizontal cable. Again, that cable beautifully disappearing. Note the use of heavy posts here, very heavy, and how gorgeous that is. So you have those posts set apart in that beautiful picket. You don't even see it. You don't even notice it. So absolutely beautiful choice as well. And vertical cable. So those folks that are really concerned about horizontal cable, we can go vertical. So in this case here, we actually have 8 feet between these heavier posts and 2 pickets, okay? We're using this design with the vertical cable. You're always going to tension vertical cable from underneath, not from the top. And as you can see here, if you're concerned with the ladder effect, this is a great solution to, again, still have your clients be able to open up their view without so much of a concern of horizontal cable. Stainless steel mesh. This is something that we're seeing. It's very hot in the industry today. We're doing a lot of these panels. We're seeing tons of these panels. Check out this high rise, okay? High rise, open up the view, yet creating a solid, okay? This is it's not like the cable that's a non-rigid infill, which you probably don't want to use here. You are using an actual rigid, stable barrier boundary here, yet opening up that view completely from a sitting position. It looks very, very gorgeous. These 4 designs are in the industry today, and you can see them all right here. The resin panels, indoor use only for these. So anyone talking resin, when you think about a resin panel, by the way, these are real organics. So that's real bamboo, real flowers, real different things. These are real organics pressed into the resin. This is not UV rated, therefore it will fall apart under the sun. You have, in this condition, you don't want to put it outside. It will yellow, it will fall apart. Indoor only, and the width of the panels are actually only 5 feet, regardless of the height of the railing, okay? So you can see that application in this staircase inside this home, that application that they have there with the resin panel. Again, real organics, real flowers here. These can also be cut and trimmed in the field. So you can see some more of those designs as well. Laser cut aluminum, this is really hot as well because you can actually design it yourself. The laser is going to cut it to whatever you want. So if you want your company logo, your sports team, your favorite sports team, you can cut anything you want inside of these panels, okay? At a railing height of 6 inches, you're going to have 6 feet width, and you're going to be at 5 feet at 42 in height. You're going to have 5 feet for width in the panels. But as you can see, this type of design, someone wanted to put in these ducts, that can be done because the laser will cut whatever you wanted to cut. So you can get lost in a book of designs or create your own, which gives architects tons of options to play with. Let's look at accessories and other things as well. So let's talk about gates here. So let's look at a swimming pool we have there. We certainly want to prevent easy entry here, right? We want to make sure that we have a good, first of all, look at that, we're vertical cable, right? Nothing horizontal. Even though we're not directly around the swimming pool area, we want to make sure that we have gates and that we have vertical cable as well. This is the type of design that you want to do for that. Also, in a residential condition, you have this beautiful gate right here. The important thing when you think about the latch for your polymer is our operative word here. That's the actual material that you want to have in these kinds. That's what you want to look for. Why? It's going to sustain, it's going to be alive and well for many years under the sun. So we're looking at outdoors here, folks. We want to make sure that we have this type of material. Also, key lockable is very nice to have, especially when you're in a residential condition where you have children and you're using this type. It's important around a swimming pool specifically, as you know. So polymer, very important. We're looking here at the memorial, the SS Arizona at Pearl Harbor. This is the railing that was done there. Very beautiful. Note that there's a nice continuous handrail. Why? Because we are in a commercial, setting. Okay, this ramp has that continuous handrail. Same thing here in this other type of application. So that's important that to talk about the handrails when we need them. Base plate covers are always great to cover those. When we talked about those lags, they have caps, right? So once you've lagged into everything, they have a cap on it. But this is another really cool way of covering it. They come in 2 pieces. So for those folks that already have the design, they already have it, and they didn't use it, they can retrofit it. That's the beauty of that. So it's in 2 parts. It's going to click together. Intermediate horizontal rails are very, very popular in the industry as well today. These intermediate height railings are doing amazing, and they look great. They really do. And you can see them with the pickets, with the horizontal cable, and with glass. Those are the options there. When we think about, existing wood frames, so say you have a frame that's in wood and you really want to change the look, you can take an infill, of glass inside of it. Say you had pickets that were wood, you can take those out, do pickets that are aluminum or stainless steel, and then use this beautiful glass as well. And you can use those sections to put inside of the frame. That being what's important here is to understand what condition the wood is in, if it's in good enough condition to be able to make this upgrade or change, if you will. So that's very, very important to note. And again, when we're talking about woods, we can be in cedars and we can be in epes, and there's a world of difference. So again, we have to always, those are serious considerations when we're doing any kind of work with wood of railing. LED lighting, really cool. As you can see, look at all the parts here. So here's our lens, right? Then we have this LED strip that goes inside of this top rail insert, and all of these join together to go inside of the top rail. They actually connect in sections. So these connect in sections, and the way that they get installed is up and down the posts. So you never see them. The power is inside of the home, and they are all dimmable. What you want to look for is that they are weatherproof, UL certified, at least rated for 50,000 hours with a CRI of 80. So to offer truer colors. I know that some manufacturers out there are doing lighting, not just white lighting, but they do it in all kinds of different colors. So you can make those changes as well. If you have holidays, you're having a holiday party, you can do it, in red and green, this kind of, the LED lights will have these kinds of colors if you wanted that. Some of them can change. And then as you can see in lighting here, what it actually looks like in these designs that you have here. So everything is plug and play, and it's very, very easy to use. Post accent lighting, just another style, because this is going to create that splash of lighting in one specific area instead of being continuous. Now, in some designs, you see it underneath the top rail, under the bottom rail, and on the post. Depends on what somebody wants. So it depends on what they want to do. So the important thing is to keep in mind that we can actually take those three options or do it just like this. In this case, just on the post accent lighting, which it looks like in this home, they have also some accent lighting here that would look very, very beautiful. So that's going to be a splash of lighting. Your post accent lighting here as well with a top rail, under the top rail lighting, as you can see that, how that would look as well. Let's look into care and maintenance. So we were talking about harsh environments, right? So within 2 miles of a salt water, body of salt water, what can happen? Electrolysis, right? Metals, stainless steel and iron, stainless steel, aluminum, stainless steel, and other metals are not necessarily good friends. And this is what happens over time when we do not isolate the metals from one another. So we want to make sure, we're going to talk about proper installation and isolation, how we accomplish it so that we don't have this happening with our clients. We really don't want that to happen. It's it's not something we want to see. So if you look at the map here, take a look at where we're located. Okay, some of us on the call today are located in a severe area, right? So in this case, this map will tell us how those metals are going to behave based on the environment, based on our air, based on the salts that we use to clean snow. Okay, that gets in the air, folks. So very important to remember that. So we want to have proper isolation of these harsh environments so that we can take into account not just de-icing salts, but acid rain as well. How do we accomplish that? We keep dissimilar metals from one another. So again, another thing that we want to use here is polymer. Once again, remember we talked about polymer, the material you want to use to isolate the stainless steel from the aluminum here, okay? So when we find ourselves in these environments, we want to have proper isolation. That actually, this little piece of polymer can take a range of temperature from below 40 degrees Fahrenheit to above 266 before it ever falls apart, before it ever deteriorates or degrades. Therefore, very important way to isolate. And the operative word here is neoprene, okay? Remember, these are cut specifically to keep water out. They're gonna be underneath that actual base plate, and they're gonna be, when we're doing that side mount to the fascia, we're also going to be able to protect that with these neoprene pads. Again, isolation from the metals, from one another, and from water as well. But it's not just water, it's isolation between the metals. So let's walk through the steps. We set our post, we set our top rail. Then we're going to connect our rail brackets if we're using a bottom rail. We're going to install our top rail insert and our bottom rail right over those rail connecting brackets. Note that we can do a lot of these sections outside of the frame, so we can have this entire section outside of the frame and build it, tighten it, and then snap it into the frame. That's a beautiful way to work. Installers love that. They can tension everything and put the section into the frame. Once it's in there, however, it's not coming out ever. I mean, you really have to, you have to take a sledgehammer to it. You really have to destroy it. Glass, same type of thing. You're going to need a bottom rail, of course, and then we're going to slide it into the frame. For horizontal cable, you're going to take your top rail insert, your picket, and your bottom rail, install that first, and then run your cables horizontally through it. So at least you can get past, you can actually create the frame before bringing in the cables. Vertical cable as well. We have vertical cables here. We can create that outside of the frame and snap it in just as well. The only time in where we do not install the top rail first would be when we are using a panel. You first want to drop the panel. It's going to have this type of cover over it, and then you're going to put your top rail. Outside of this option, you actually want to put your post, then your top rail for everything else. But this is the only condition in which, if you're using a panel, you want to do your top rail last. As far as care and maintenance, we would care for it like we would care for the finish on your new car, okay? Nothing corrosive, nothing, basically nothing that is going to destroy it, that it's going to have any kind of harsh wool, steel wool, these types of things. You wouldn't take that to that kind of finish, right? So you want to do the same thing here. We want to create, we have that beautiful powder coating that it's not going to rust and crack or anything else. And we want to make sure that we keep it functional. So what we do with that is we clean it, especially in harsh environments. You're going to need to clean it a little bit more than twice a year. I would imagine that that would be the case because we have a lot of these, we want to prevent the contact of these types of harsh, when it comes to either metal on metal or the salts that are actually can cause some rusting and corrosion on the metals. So we want to do the cleaning when we're cool and we're shaded, not in the hot sun, not in the freezing temperatures. That's not optimal, okay? And we want to clean our glass with something very, very non-abrasive, and our cables never with stainless, with steel wool. We're looking at stainless steel. Stainless steel has a chromium oxide coating on it that makes it shiny and beautiful. So to prevent any kind of harm to it by any of these, you can look at, trisodium phosphate, phosphoric acid, hydrochloric acid, hydrofluoric, all of these are very, very harsh. So we want to make sure that we clean it and protect it. And in the industry today, any stainless steel cleaner, soap and water is going to do the job. But the beauty of the stainless steel cleaners, a lot of them are two-step, in which you can actually have a coating on it that you apply after you've cleaned it. So it's a protectant for months and months after, before it ever breaks down. But that's what you really want to do. You want to clean it in the way that you would protect a finish on a new car. That's how you do it, very, very gently. Also, Cable is always going to need retensioning, so you always want to watch it. Make sure that everything is nice and taut. Very easy. You pop off the little cap and then you retighten it with a 7/16" wrench, I think, for the most part. So very simple couple turns and that's tightened. You don't have to kill it. It doesn't have to be tensioned to hurt the frame, just to be tight. That's it. And have some resistance. Very important to note that let's use touch-up paint sparingly. If it's just like you would in your car, if you have a little dot, a little scratch, you use it just on that. Touch-up paint is not to go ahead and paint your entire post with it because it's going to look terrible. So we just want to make sure that we are using it correctly. I wanted to bring to you this case study today to talk about what the architect what this project was about and why the element selection, why the material selection for this firm and where, so we're in Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, and we have the waterfront, right? So this whole thing was deteriorating, all of this edge, lots of merchants weren't around anymore. People weren't, it was a disaster. There were cups falling into the water. The paint, it had to be repainted every year or two. It was just not good. So they went ahead and they did a revitalization, if you will, of this project. And in order to do that, they had to overhaul that whole thing. So what are the conditions that we've been talking about already that what are we going to take in? We talked about it several slides ago, moisture in the air. So we're going to be sure that we're going to select a material or we're going to use a grade of powder coating that is going to do well in high moisture environment. We're going to prevent we want to use a top rail that's going to prevent people from putting drinks on top of it that are going to fall into the lake and pollute it. We certainly don't want to have any pollution ever. If we can prevent that, of course, we don't want that going into our waters, especially in a public use situation. We had mismatched type of railings before that were just not looking good at all. So they had become corroded. So the goal was to have a good powder coating. The material selection had to be right. You had to select the top rail to be the best option that you could have. And you had to have the powder coating at the right, at the AMA 2604, so that you can have years and years and years of it looking amazing in this type of an environment. And we also wanted to open up the view. We don't want to obstruct that beautiful view. And of course, have protective isolation. So check out what they did here. They had this option to sort of marry some of these elements and make it work well and go with the water. They chose this color for the railing. The top rail is round. Check out that elliptical top rail, powder coated in the AMA 2604. It is also done, of course, everything beautifully to code. And we have these, the powder coating that was done is going to prevent having to repaint it often. And the top rail being round, you can't put the drink on it. So that's going to prevent people from doing that. Note also here in the photo, the use of a very, very cool actual panel that we've used there to make it really nautical looking. See that? This really cool panel that went in there and went in here. So you have your open view, you have this incredible, we've staggered that cable to create that non-linear, that curve. Lighting, very important, top and bottom. So when you see this at night now, there are tons of merchants around. In a normal environment, you would have your merchants, you would have a lot of foot traffic, you would have the lighting that would make it look gorgeous, and you have it sort of looking at the water with the same color of the water as the water, having that beautiful look to it. So that's going to bring functionality and for years to come for them. So I think this firm did a fantastic design for them, or a redesign to revitalize the space so that it can be used by the public in a safe way without causing any pollution. And of course, we took into account isolation of those metals. At this point, I will gladly take all questions. This concludes our course today. So any questions that you have, please go ahead and ask them.
Actually, could you go back to that last slide, please?
Yes, of course, right here.
Yeah. So I notice on this project, the intermediate verticals don't
Yes.
go to the ground.
Don't go where?
To the deck.
Yes, they're going there. What an excellent eye you have. Yes, that's great. It's going right to the bottom rail in this case. So because the posts are set closer to each other, you can do the mounting of the post to the side of the decking, as you see here. And you can, all that the Picket is doing there is actually, you can do a design like this because the only function that the Picket has is to prevent the cables from opening to that 4 inches. That's it. It's really, they don't provide much support at all to anything. They're there to hold the cable. So the only reason so the way we can do this and have it go right to the bottom rail instead of all the way to the deck flooring, it's perfectly fine to do this because again, it's installed to just affect, to just keep the cables from opening to the 4 inches. That's it.
Are
So
the structural posts only 3 feet apart, or then are they more?
These here, these are actually, it's hard to say from this photo, but these should be, the posts actually look like they are 3 feet. And then we've actually put, we've actually put a Picket in between because we're in this high traffic commercial space. So that would be the reason why this was used this way. Why we had that. We don't want we don't want these, we want to prevent these cables from opening, especially in a commercial setting like this.
Yeah.
So we can go 3 feet and still put a Picket in between that to even lessen, and that's something that probably was taken care, with the local code, the authority having jurisdiction there. It might have been an impact with not that the firm was discussing between the contractor. You guys know how this goes. And then the authority having jurisdiction might have said, well, we want that Picket there. It would have otherwise, you otherwise wouldn't see that, but I can see why that's very important in this type of environment.
Okay.
The cost of the cable versus the wire mesh, how do those compare?
They compared, well, the cable, it's a very, very different cost. Because I only handle education, I would refer you to the people that can give you a quote either way, your salesperson in your area. But that being said, these are much, much more expensive. The
cables are much more expensive.
No, the cable is cheap.
Oh.
The cable is really not expensive. The cable itself is very inexpensive. Very, very, actually, these panels are much more expensive. You're going to have
there's probably a different install cost.
And there is an install cost. But again, the panel is going to be higher. I don't know the difference between the two, but I can certainly get back to you with some information about the difference in cost. Of course, everything would, they would say, well, give us an idea of what the project would be, the size of the project. Everything is going to influence the cost, of course. But in something like this, it wouldn't have been that much because you're not using panels throughout. This is used as an accent. That's it. But it is more expensive.
Will we have your contact info? I have 2 projects, one in New Hampshire and one in Massachusetts.
Absolutely. And your local representative is actually Duffy McCarthy. You said New Hampshire and in Mass, right?
New Hampshire on Lake Sunapee and then Massachusetts in Mattapoisett.
Yes, perfect. So those 2, I will have him get in touch with you so that you can go over those, any details. That's perfect. I'm so glad that you told me that.
So on the sign up, I'm Lisa Abels.
Okay, perfect. If we could make a note of that. Also, my email is at the end of if you want me to move to the next slide, you can see right here. Feel free to send an email to me, and then I will immediately put you in contact with the local representative.
I'm sorry, but I lost the large screen when I signed up for the certificate. So I no longer see the large screen. I just see the,
I can put it in the chat. I can
Um,
put Alejandra's email in the chat.
Lisa,
That's
try.
great.
I don't know how to get back even to the chat. All I see is the thumbprints.
Try clicking on your Zoom icon. Do you have a Zoom icon in your?
Yes.
Just try clicking.
Oh, okay, now I have a large screen and, oh, okay, now I have the chat.
That's all you have to do if you lose it.
Okay, thank you.
Ever.
And
Perfect, perfect.
so,
Lisa, I'm glad.
and you're gonna put your email in the chat, is that right, Alejandra?
I put it in there.
Oh, perfect, thank you.
Perfect. I want everybody to be able to contact me so that I can get you any projects that you're working on, get you any support and any questions answered that you have for today. Absolutely. And going forward with your projects, we can certainly do that for you. So I will put them, if you send me an email, I'll get you
Thank
right
you.
to where you need to be.
Are there rosin panels if you're using them on the interior, but there's gonna be a lot of natural light in the space?
Mhm.
Still have to worry about them fading, right?
No, no, you really don't. It's only when it's outside in the sun. If you have a lot of natural light that it's diffused, remember, it's also, there's actually a lot of natural light. This is, you're seeing my living room behind me there. It looks very bright. There's a lot of natural light coming in from the skylights. That being said, it doesn't do much fade unless you were to have something coming through glass, very, very, direct. If it's a direct, otherwise it really wouldn't do any yellowing or fading at all. It would just be,
Okay,
if you put it outside, it's not UV rated. We say it more so that people don't go and install it outside because the sun will destroy it very,
Okay.
very quickly.
Thank you.
Inside, no.
I had a question. So how often do you need to retighten the cables?
Great question. Every time you see them loose. Simply stated, generally speaking, okay, when you use aluminum railing, you don't have a lot of retentioning. If you were to notice a cable sag a little bit, you just would retention it at that point. But usually when they're properly installed, they really don't need, and we have much more of an issue with that. I wouldn't even say an issue, a need to retention when we're using wood because of contraction, expansion, and because the cable itself, believe it or not, it does stretch minimally, but it does. So in wood applications, we need to do it more often. And we ask people to just watch it. In some cases, you need to do it, maybe a couple of times a year. If you see that, maybe only once. But when we're using aluminum or any metals, not really. I mean, it generally does not happen. And if it does, you retention the one cable and that's it.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Sure, of course.
I have a question about the spacing of the newel posts. Can you tell us what is the maximum that in general, for general planning purposes in a residential setting? Because I find that the newel posts can detract from the sense of minimalism that I'm often after. So I have a stair with, say, a 7-foot run, and if I have to put an intermediate post, it just looks a lot busier than I would like it to look.
Okay, the best way to answer that, if you were to go, I mean, sometimes we see 8-foot runs with 2 pickets, okay, 2 intermediate pickets in there, or we do the 6 feet with 1, sometimes 7 feet with 1. The problem here is cable deflection. The reason the picket goes in there, and we don't want to talk about anytime the cable is running a free span, it's running freely without getting checked by one of those pickets, okay? Then you have much more of a chance that the cables will open beyond that 4 inches because you're looking at that non-rigid infill type that is cable. So the reason that the picket is there is to hold that cable in place. Another thing think of it this way, the longer the free span, the higher the pretension requirement. When you over tension cable, you are hurting the frame. Let me give you this illustration. If we have 36 inches, so are you using 36 or 42?
36 and yeah, probably 36 everywhere.
Okay, so if it's 36, You're going to, are you using a bottom rail or just a bottom cable?
Well, if the bottom rail allows me to get rid of a newel post and use a picket, that would be my preference. The newel posts just they're just much heavier. So if I can eliminate
Much
an
heavier.
intermediate newel post and use one or
Okay.
two pickets, that would be preferred.
Well, my suggestion would be lose the bottom rail, go to a bottom cable. You're going to have it much more open. And if you can do that, I just want to give you this illustration though of how much tension these cables have on one post. So now we have a total of 11 cables at 36 inches in height. You would have 9 if you have the bottom rail, but if we're not going to use the bottom rail, you're going to have 10 or 11. And those cables, each one of them, when it's properly tensioned, is going to have about 300 pounds of pull each one. And so when you think about letting them run free, too long a distance beyond 6 feet without that picket in between, you're having to tension them more because you're having to do higher tensioning. It's to keep them from opening beyond, the code of, the 4 inches. So you certainly want to prevent that from happening when possible. Believe it or not, if you have your newels at 6 feet, I would say, even if you put in a picket at 7 feet, I know we get a lot of this, well, we really don't want to put the picket, we just want to leave it open, but that's what's going to happen. And then your frame will be very stressed. I think if you take a real life look at what 6 feet looks like with a very thin picket in between, it's not going to create, I know what you're trying to go for, but it's not going to create much of an obstruction at all. And it's going to keep that to code and keep that cable from opening too much. And you're going to reduce the amount of tension on your frame that could over time start to have a bowing effect or a bending of it increases the vulnerability of the post, especially if you're not going to use a bottom rail, because a bottom rail means stability between the posts. If you're just going to a bottom cable, you definitely want to put in a picket, and you want to have those be 6 feet apart. You really do. The newel's 6 feet, and then put a picket in between, a really thin one. It's going to help a lot.
So for general planning purposes, what would you say is a good rule of thumb, or let's even call it a fuzzy rule of thumb, without pinning you down too tightly? If I'm just using newel posts with no intermediate pickets, what would you consider a comfortable maximum? And then if I'm using pickets, how much farther apart can I put those newel posts?
Okay. 4 to 5 feet. 4 to 5 feet, no more, if you want to run free without picket.
Pickets, okay.
Yeah, 4 to 5 feet, no more than 5. And if you are going to use the picket, I think you could take it to 6.5, maximum of 7. It's not the most optimum, but you can do it. Or you can do 8 feet and put 2 pickets in between. But I think that's kind of defeating what you want to do. So I would say, 6.5, 7, no more than 7.
Okay, that's great. Yeah.
Okay, but that's a rule of planning because of what you're trying to achieve, and I understand that. But we really don't want to get too much outside of the perimeters, because that tensioning has to be that much higher, and the stress on your frame will be greater.
Right.
And would those be pickets that go to the deck, or they could be, well,
You're
you have
going
to have
to
a
the
bottom rail to do them like the other,
Yes.
the picture
Without
we're talking about, right?
Correct. If he's not going to use a bottom rail to open up the view more, then you really want to, you have to go to the deck surface. Yes.
I have a quick question, if I could. Is there
Yes, of course.
Is there a maximum limit on the overall length of a given cable, or a given run of cables? Let's say, can I do a 100-foot long rail without any sort of break in the rhythm of posts?
You actually can. The general rule of thumb is 70 feet in a straight line before you have to stop and start again. But now Feeney has a post that can let you double the distance after the 70 feet. So at the 70 feet mark, if you want to go to 140, we have a special post that allows for that to happen. Also, at 70 feet, if you didn't want to use a post, you would have to install an inline turnbuckle. That's going to be sitting right on the line. So it's kind of not the most aesthetically pleasing. So you're going 70 feet before you have to stop and start again. And that's in a straight line, by the way. And we can double the distance with the post or install an inline turnbuckle to go a bit further. If you're looking at 100 feet, I would put in that post. So you certainly can do that. And Feeney would take care of doing that, you know, helping you work out where that design is gonna, to make it look perfect for you. Now, when we are turning, we don't want more than 2 90-degree angles in any run of cable. And I'll tell you, in up to 50 feet. And the reason I say that is because if you turn twice, if you were to turn a third time, it's too hard to retension the cable. And if you take it longer distance beyond the 50 feet, too hard to tension the cable turning. So no more than 2 turns in any run of cable in up to a distance of 50 feet. If we use that rule, we're always going to be able to retension the cable properly.
Okay. Next question is, if you're doing a gradual curve, let's say kind of like those last images of that waterfront,
Yes.
but maybe a more gradual curve that changes to a sharper curve. Well, long story. The intermediate, not well, the posts, I think typically are designed for the cable to go straight through, but when you're creating a curve, the cables are coming into the post at an angle.
Yes.
And I presume as the angle gets to be fairly sharp, do you have, would that post be a standard post that's kind of designed for the railing, the cable to go straight through? Or are there custom made posts that allow weird angles to occur?
We would look at some customization if it was needed. Most of the time we can get the cable by setting the post properly and sort of staggering and setting them. So in the condition that you see here, this cable, we're able to run it through and it's actually going to bend very naturally in this way. Even though, like I said, it's a linear product, cable doesn't really love doing that, but we force it to do it and we are able to do it without having, in this case, to do the pre-drilling is enough so that there's enough room for it to do some movement. It would depend in what it's called for, what degree angle we're looking at in order to have to pre-drill that at a, if we're looking at a really sharp angle, then yes, we would have to take some consideration into what the project would call for.
Mhm.
But otherwise, just doing some movement around the edges can have, you know, as you can see, there's a straight line here, and then we start the bend. And you can see almost a straight section right behind here, and then kind of another straight section, and then we start to bend. But we
Right.
were able to do that very easily here.
With the
Without much
standard
speed.
posts, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
We have a couple of questions in the chat.
Yes,
One of them is, does the wire come in different diameters?
it does. The cable comes in the 1/8 inch, 3/16, and a 1/4 inch for a very, very heavy rope commercial type of setting. So those are the three, 1/8, 3/16, and a 1/4.
Okay, and the other question, which I'm not sure if you can answer this, an average cost per square foot of the rail, your railing. Just say it's the cable rail.
If we're looking at aluminum, okay, I can give you sort of a ballpark. If we're looking at retail, by the way, so I'm only going to give you the retail that I know. This is going to be with the cable, the lighting, all of that is going to, you know, it depends. It's going to go up from there, but you're looking at about 125 120 to 125 per linear foot.
Linear
And
foot.
that's to go into, but that is including everything. So you're taking into account something that it's going to already come with your cables. It's going to be a complete solution. Of course, if you're going to add lighting, that's going to increase the cost. If you're adding gates, any other kinds of customization is going to increase the cost. But, you know, and it can run even 160 or something like this. But if you're having a lot of other things, but again, this is a complete turnkey type of product solution. So it's not that you would be, oh, the railing is going to cost this, and then, you know, this is the cost of my post, and then I'm going to have to pay for the cable. No, everything is included when we're looking at the product that is it's called Design Rail for Feeney, the Design Rail product, which is the aluminum railing. As for the cable itself, using it in wood, you know, it could be anywhere. I mean, from, it depends on what you're doing, 30 to 50 to 60, sometimes very much less if you're using just the cable and wood, and depending on how you're using it. But again, pricing, I don't really know too much about, but I can say what I did tell you about the aluminum. That's about a good starting point, would be about 125.
Okay. Are there any more questions?
I do have one more, if I may.
Sure.
Thank you. This has really been a helpful, very helpful presentation, very timely for me. On the handrails, do you have wall hardware so that I can use the same handrail on the wall opposite the open side? And then on the lighting in the handrail, how is that switched? Is it touch sensitive, or is there a separate switch?
No, everything. So to first answer, we do have fittings that have wall anchors. So you can use, depending on your design, we will be able to do a connection to something existing. Most of the time we have the fittings that do that. Even if we, need to do a fitting with an expansion anchor, anything like that, depending if we're going into a stone structure or something different, we can certainly do that. We could look at your design and decide whether or not that's going to work, and what it physically looks like and what fittings we have for that. So the answer to that is most of the time, yes. And as far as the, going through, I'm sorry, tell me again the other half of your
Switching.
question was?
Lighting, how is it?
The lighting. Mhm.
And I'm also wondering, is there any difficulty with replacing the LEDs?
You won't need to replace them for a very, very long time, but no, they're easy, plug and play, and they are hardwired. So that's going to be underneath the deck. You're going to have your, your junction, your boxes underneath it. And the power is coming from inside of the house on a switch. So in order to do the dimming, you would dim them all from the inside, and you would turn them on and off from the inside. They are not touch on and off. And they all dim together, and otherwise you're creating this, and you can do them with a remote, but you can't really, if you're going to do section per section, you kind of have to have a remote for each one at the moment. So you do them from the inside of the house, dim them all, or put them as high, all of them, and turn them on and off from the inside. That's how they work. They're all hardwired to a box, and they're continuous underneath. And if you were to need to change them out, they're for very, very many. I mean, they have such a long life, but if you ever needed to change them out, of course, they're
And
not.
the hard wire goes through the newel post, I assume.
Yes, of course. It's coming up the post and underneath the top rail with that lens, always cool to the touch, of course.
And the transformer could go inside the house if need be.
Yeah, we have that inside. You can put it inside, and then you're, underneath as well, depending where the placement is going to be underneath the deck.
I think we may have all had experiences where LED fixtures fail to meet that 50,000 hour, promise.
Doesn't surprise me. Yeah.
I mean, even high quality fixtures sometimes fail.
Sure. We're using the best that we can, but it was a very important question to ask if they're easy enough to replace them. Yes, they all plug and play. So say you have a section that is not functioning properly anymore, we can replace just that part of it.
And can you get a 90 CRI rather than 80 CRI?
That I know that we were using the 80. I'm not sure that you can. This is an outside firm that we work with for the lighting. I will be able to check on that and get back to you guys with that answer. If you want to send me an email with that question, I certainly can get the answer to that.
Thank you.
I haven't heard of it yet, though.
I'm muted. So any more questions?
Very good presentation.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to work with all of you today, and I appreciate the invitation very, very much. Once again, I'll put my email here. I know you already put it in the chat. we're always here to be of service, and I really thank you for your time. Everyone will receive their credits and certificates accordingly. I'll probably try to get those out to you. The credits will be through AIA, so it takes them, 5 to 10 business days, but I will submit right away today, but the certificates we should be able to get out to you today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Alejandra. It was great
My
to meet you.
pleasure. It's
Thank
been
you.
great. Nice
Bye,
talking to
everyone. Nice to see
Thank you so
everyone's
much.
faces.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.
See everyone next month.
Yes.
Bye.
Beth, do you
Yeah.
want to stay a second?
Sure.
Thank you.
I can also call you.
Yeah, I think perhaps we have some